Good afternoon, Howard Wig, Code Green, Think Tech Hawaii. My distinguished guest this afternoon is Leslie Cole Brooks, CEO of the Distributed Energy Resources Council. Title of our program is Solar the Savior? Because all of you Leslie Cole Brooks fans will realize that she was for many, many years the director.
I have fans.
Of course, all dozen of them, yes. Of the solar
that
energy.
Makes me feel really good.
Yeah. Solar energy. Right.
I'm sorry, did I get you off your game there?
yes.
I'm sorry.
Hawaii Solar Energy Association.
Right.
Yeah. And she was in that capacity for years and years and years.
3.5.
Oh.
Does it seem like longer?
It seems like longer, yeah, because I just associate you.
Better you say that than me, though, right? Yeah. Okay.
So let me, before we get into Leslie herself, let me give you a little background about the way I approach the whole energy future scene for Hawaii. Number one, we have, and I am part of this, the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. We shall have 100% clean energy to produce electricity by the year 2045, which is only 30 years from now. That's a heck of a jump. But standing in our way of that is the fact that you all saw the governor's State of the State this morning. He will cool 1,000 classrooms. That's one heck of an energy jump. Right there. We have Kaka'ako, 20 high rises, all of them, every unit in there, centrally air conditioned. Think of the electricity growth from that. Then we have out on the Ewa Plains, the Ho'opili residential development, 10,500 new homes. Then we have the Castle and Cook development, planned along the H2, I believe that's another 4,500 or 5,000 homes. On the Big Island, there is another 4,000 or 5,000 homes planned for the Waikoloa area of the Big Island. I'm not even looking at growth on Maui or Kauai. And as if that isn't enough, net energy metering just took a big hit from the Public Utilities Commission, meaning that people with PV systems don't get the full retail value of their energy produced anymore. They only get about half that value. Maybe that will discourage the PV industry. And finally, oil prices are falling like a rock, making everything oil related much, much more attractive. For instance, people might be out buying SUVs like mad again because oil is going to be so cheap. Heard just this morning, oil in Oklahoma is $1.49 per gallon. What happens if electricity in Hawaii gets cheaper? Doesn't that wipe out the incentive for renewable energy and energy efficiency? So, on the one hand, we have all of that force against us. Fortunately, with people like Leslie, we have this huge counteractive force. We already have about 100,000 solar hot water heating systems in this teeny little state, and each one of them I regard as a battery against the peak demand of electricity, which occurs between 5 p.m., 9:30 p.m., exactly when people are getting home. They get home to this great big 80 or 120 gallon storage tank of hot water. The hot water heater doesn't go on. We already have about 71,000 photovoltaic systems in the state, and what they are doing, if you look at the traditional electricity use profile for any of the islands, 6 o'clock you start to go up. About 10 o'clock you reached a peak, you went level until about 5, then you went through an evening peak, and then you descended, and demand between midnight and 6 a.m. is low. What's happened with these 71,000 PV systems is it looks like a giant shark has taken a great big bite out of that levelized daytime demand, and it goes way, 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 way down. But on the other hand, it's jagged because the clouds come and go for the wind energy, the wind stops, the wind starts again. So that's the not so good news, but we have batteries coming on like gangbusters. Several of my guests in the last few months have been battery people. They're getting to the point where they are cost effective. They can completely respond to demand or storage, as the case may be, in communicating with the utility, which brings us to demand response. And we can maybe go into that, or I can go into that later. And demand response can be plugged into electric vehicles, EVs. We've already got about 5,000 of them on the road. They have huge batteries. If the EV owner is willing to participate, Hawaiian Electric can take some of that energy out when they need another form of demand response. As if this wasn't enough, the cost of solar panels is dropping. There's a glut of solar panels. Cost is supposed to go down, down, down. Plus there's all this new research on better and better and better solar panels. The efficiency ratio is going to go up, up, up. And we in the energy office have all of these wonderful programs going on. And from my efficiency standpoint, there's Moore's Law is just about in effect. You remember Moore's Law, Leslie?
I love physics.
Yes, okay. That is where the capacity of computing systems will double every 18 months, while the size of them will shrink by half. Almost the same thing is happening in my field, energy efficiency. Everything that goes into building a building is getting better and better and better, in this case allowing us to keep the heat out of homes and business much, much more efficiency. And then finally, there's the fourth industrial revolution, the cloud. Pretty soon, everything is going to be able to communicate with everything from an electrical standpoint. Every PV system, residential, can be hooked up to the utility. They can all be talking to one another. We can deliver exactly as much electricity as we need at that second from the best possible, cleanest source. Whew. How's all that?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
Well, okay, now we get to.
I started
Leslie.
taking notes, but then I saw that it was why. We'll just dive in.
We all know you are. Your huge fan base knows you from the solar, and you got a
really.
fan base.
I don't know.
Sure,
I know
sure,
some people don't like me very much.
Well,
they're louder.
Yeah.
If you like me, call. No. Anyway, yeah.
But
here we are.
You left your post as the Hawaii Solar Energy Association,
right,
and you
right.
are now the CEO of the Distributed Energy Resources Council. What is the Distributed Energy Resources Council?
So, well, first, just to clarify, not that it matters that much, but I'm a stickler for language. So I'm the executive director.
Oh, executive
So
director.
I don't know that
Okay.
we have a CEO position per se. I wouldn't want to step on any toes. But so I'm the executive director of this new organization, and it's a 501c6, so it's a nonprofit trade organization. So we're able to go to the legislature and lobby. We, as a body, we can go to the PUC and submit motions to intervene and be part of dockets that are going on.
And are you an intervener already then? Or?
We are,
Yeah,
and in fact,
okay.
just before I came here, I dropped off a motion to intervene in the demand response docket that opened just at the very end of last year. So that's in, that's done. Cross our fingers that goes through. But we're also have participant status in the Power Supply Improvement Plan docket that's just ramping up right now, and we've submitted a motion to intervene late in the DER docket phase 2. Since our organization was formed last year, that was well after the Distributed Energy Resources docket had begun. So we're trying to get in on phase 2, which is so perfect for this group. So we're very hopeful that we'll succeed there.
So you have, I gather, a whole bunch of different organizations that are members of this. You represent, this is a trade group, so you've got a lot of different organizations.
Yeah, different
with you,
groups, yeah, different companies. So the steering committee, we're starting out with, so we're actually going to be on the air again. Is it okay to talk about
Sure,
other
yes,
I don't
yes,
know.
yes.
I don't know if there's competition here or anything like that. So. Later this month, I believe February 10th, and I'm going to have the steering committee is going to come with me. It'll be really fun because we'll be able to talk about their companies and what they do and their different systems and everything. So, but just to kind of the cliff notes on them is right now we have Enphase, which is a major microgrid inverter manufacturer. They have a storage system that's coming online. They also have about 80% of all of the inverters installed here in Hawaii, and they are able to remotely change settings, and they've been very instrumental in really helping us to continue on with the different interconnection requirements from the utility.
Yeah, when I mentioned batteries, I should have said batteries and storage, just
well,
generic.
actually, could we back up just a second?
Sure.
Because we were talking about before this started about all the acronyms for one of the things we all have to live with, and how distributed generation has just kind of quietly, it went from DG to DER. I noticed that with the commission, that we heard about distributed generation, or DG, as kind of those in the know say all the time. And now that's not said anymore. Now it's DER. So that stands for distributed energy resources. And distributed generation is part of that. It's a subset. So the key is that it's distributed. That means it's all over the place. It's not a centralized power plant, but it's the power of the aggregate. It's the fact that you have it on rooftops and tops of commercial buildings and residential homes and the tops of parking lots, wherever it is that you have room to put it. And so it's great because it's not going on anything that we should be planting our food on or on some other very needed use for that land. So it's distributed, but it's distributed energy resources now. So that includes distributed generation, but also other energy resources like storage, as you've been talking about, demand response, EVs.
DV is?
EVs, electric vehicles.
Oh,
that's
EVs,
that's
okay.
definitely a distributed
Yeah,
energy
yeah.
resource, depending upon how it's used and interconnected. And then the companies that, I call them the energy maitre d's, that they have the software systems that allow the utility to talk to the homeowner or talk to the commercial company that has an installation that says, hey, we need capacity. Oh, hey, we need a little more VAR over here. Oh, hey, looks like AES is going to lose its marbles again in about 3 minutes. Do you think you could soak up some of that load? Or so. So it's that's the smart grid. It's where everybody talks to everybody else, has the capacity to take or give as needed, and is part of making this work for us to move forward.
Wow. So this is exactly the type of thing that I was describing. A great minds
You're
must
totally
think
on
alike.
point, yeah. And it's really exciting, and that's why I decided to move to this next group. I saw it as the next step. My previous group's wonderful. I love them. They're like family. It was a hard decision for me to leave. And they're still very relevant, but I've broadened my scope so to speak that we can look at not just distributed generation, but also all the other resources that involve demand response and storage and all of that. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
That is exciting stuff.
So,
yeah, that's what I referred to, the cloud.
oh, right,
And,
that. Well,
yeah,
same
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
let me finish introducing my
Sure.
other companies because I would be
Yes,
remiss if I
yeah,
stopped.
sure.
So Enphase, eGear, Hawaii Energy Connection, which I'm sure many of your listeners have heard of before. It's a Hawaii-based company. They have a large share of the installed photovoltaics. They have, together with eGear, a really interesting smart energy storage system, STEM, which you've probably heard of. They have, again, a smart storage system. It's a learning software that helps customers understand their load and help work with demand charges. And they also can work in the aggregate to provide services to the electrical grid. Debuchy Energy, which is a Japanese company who has right now over 1,000 of their storage and smart inverter projects installed in Japan, and Hybrid Energy. And I'm paranoid now that I've forgotten somebody.
Well, that means that it's time for your brain and my brain to take a break and the program to take a break.
Okay.
Think Tech Hawaii, back in a minute.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on Think Tech Hawaii. I hope that you will tune in and watch the show. It is inspiring and uplifting and educational also. We talk with artists of all different ilk. We talk with them about what they do, how they do it, and most importantly, most dear to my heart, why they do it. And it never ceases to be fascinating when you get the answer to that question. I hope you'll join us on Center Stage, 2 o'clock Wednesday afternoons. Aloha.
Hi, I'm Stan the Energy Man, Stan Osterman, and I'm here to tell you about my show on Friday, every Friday, on my lunch hour, 12 o'clock till 1 o'clock here on Think Tech Hawaii. We talk about everything energy and anything you ever wanted to know about energy. So we're full of energy, and we'll see you here every Friday at noon to 1. Aloha.
Good afternoon again. Howard Wig, Code Green, Think Tech Hawaii. My guest is Leslie Cole Brooks, the Executive Director of the Distributed Energy Resources Council. And so far, this is a rather complex nonprofit organization that you've got on your hands here. All of these energy-related companies who are tying into the electrical grid in one shape or form, and presumably they're all going to be working together. They're not going to be stepping on one another.
Well, let's hope so, or I'll be completely insane in about a year. Well, you know what's...
Because you listed about 10 different companies.
6 actually, right now, of the steering committee, but it may sound like more because there's so many cool things that they do.
Yeah, and they each have a different slice of the pie.
They do.
And they all have to congeal and interact, so sort of like a giant brain or something.
Yeah.
So that
like the Borg, maybe. Do you think?
The Borg, I
do you
don't
remember?
know from Borgs,
for any Star Trek fans. Well,
no.
so that, but they had one central, and I think what is the real power of this group is that it's not just one thing. It's not just PV, it's not just storage, that there are all these different strategies, and it's an acknowledgement that there are many different types of solutions depending upon what the problem is. And it's not a one-stop shop on our electrical grid, right? It depends on where you live, it depends on what the utility needs, it depends on the status of the circuit, of the neighborhood. And some things might be appropriate in some areas, and maybe some things would be more appropriate in other areas, or a combination. So I like to think that we're here to provide just a myriad of different solutions to the electrical grid, to all ratepayers, and to customers who want to invest in renewables. So you're totally spot on there that it's complicated, and it just is. So
and this
what are you going to do?
It would not have been possible even 5 years ago.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because I refer to it as an electronic novice as the cloud. This incredible interaction of jillions of different computers, and somehow they're all syncing together and responding appropriately. It's just mind-boggling to me. I'll give an analogy. My lady friend has one of those fancy-dancy watches. You know,
the Macintosh, where everything is all right there. So you just look at your watch.
And it has, and I'm not speaking for myself, this is in writing, it has more computing capability than did the U.S. military during the Korean War.
Wow.
That little thing.
Huh.
So this is Moore's Law in action, and I'm seeing your organization as a manifestation of that, where you're bringing these myriad groups with infinite amounts of information pouring in, and you're somehow interconnecting them and making them work as a making them work in synchronicity. Is that a good?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And what we're really responding to, what we see is the need for information and transparency and innovation. And that's what we bring. And there are several key dockets right now at the PUC. The second part of the DER docket that's going to go in and value, amongst other things, things like grid services. So if I have a PV system, for instance, and I have a smart inverter on my roof, and let's say I have storage, and I have an agreement with the utility that when they need more VAR on the line, which is like the foam on a beer. It's this funny kind of energy. It's hard to explain what it is, but it's really useful, and it's important to keep the quality of the electricity appropriate for everybody. So if I say, okay, I can provide that with my system, my smart inverter knows how to do that and when to do that, how might I get compensated for that? Or if I don't provide anything, what's the fair price for that, for being on the grid and then asking for services from the electrical grid? So there's a lot to consider. There's costs and benefits of all these different systems, and we are here to provide the data and information to help do those analyses. For instance, that's just one docket of several. So,
What comes to mind is, in the beginning of my introduction, I said there's these huge new demands coming to Hawaii, electrical demands, the cool schools, the Kaka'ako high-rises, Ho'opili, and the other residential. Net energy metering is not what it used to be, and oil prices are going down, therefore de-incentivizing all of these measures because the cost of electricity is going to go down. But you're saying there's this counterbalance of what I call the cloud system, where the utilities are going to be able to fine-tune their needs in conjunction with all of these different companies. And by foam on the beer, I think maybe you mean that ideally the utility delivers electricity at between 59.5 hertz and 60.5 hertz. And is maybe this VAR the fine-tuning mechanism to keep it right in that band there?
I probably shouldn't even have brought up VAR because it's almost like a secret thing that only engineers really know about, and they try to explain it to us, and it's not quite that, but you're on the right track. But it's an important part of having a healthy electrical grid, and it's just an example of something, a service that a distributed resource could provide. But I wanted to go back to what you were saying before about with the governor's address this morning, and 1,000. Finally, the poor kids, that they're gonna get some relief and have an environment they can actually sit and learn in. The price of oil going down and all of that. I think it's really interesting about the AC. If we look at that against the duck, right, against the duck curve that you talked about. You call it a shark. I like the shark with the teeth because it's intermittent,
it is
right?
jagged, yeah.
But on the other hand, it's a duck, or it's the nene curve, right? Because on some circuits it can dip down so low that it can go below the tolerance for the minimum generation. And if we have a lot more AC load during the day, we could soak up all of that excess energy. So that would be a positive thing. The development that you're talking about, though, all those people are going to go home at night. And so that's when the duck curve gets shifted the other way. And we need to be able to take the energy we produce and save it and use it for later. But please, can you ask your listeners to not go out and buy an SUV? This is a special favor to me.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm a geologist by training. And oil is, in fact, a non-renewable resource.
Yep.
And we won't have more of it. And it costs more, it's more dangerous. and it's just generally a worse deal to continue to extract it.
Well, I
So-
would like to think that most Americans, having been through several roller coaster
Why?
rides with oil,
I know.
that this
Yeah.
is just a temporary phenomenon.
Temporary.
Something's going to happen.
Yes.
We live in a very volatile world. Oil supply is going to be cut off, and boom, price is going to go back up.
It will, it
Yeah.
will. It doesn't, the fact that
Yeah.
the prices have gone down does not really reflect the fact that it's a limited resource,
Mhm.
and that we have to be really smart about how we use what we have. And there are many uses for oil and gas that's hard to transfer over. But for some things like generating electricity, just cars, big cars, I don't know. I'll probably
Yep.
make some people mad with that, but
Nah,
I
you
just,
won't.
it's not smart. It's a political issue, because it's just a matter of time that something is going to happen somewhere. And like you're saying, then the price will shoot up. And if anyone is surprised by that,
They shouldn't.
they
be.
shouldn't be surprised.
yeah.
They shouldn't be surprised. And even if it were true that magically some huge reserve of oil had been found somewhere that all the geologists just overlooked, which hasn't happened. But even if that were the case, or there was some way to extract what's left, some new means that we don't have right now, but really revolutionize how they could take the very last bits out. It's still a fossil fuel. When you burn it, it still produces greenhouse gases. It still goes into the atmosphere, and we're done, just done with that. So I don't care how cheap it is. I don't care if somebody comes to your house with a can of oil and says, "Please, God, take this from me." No, we're done. So doesn't matter. Look at what's happening. Look at the snowstorm in DC. I mean, the hottest year on record last year, right? And we're on this beautiful island.
I think you're preaching to the choir.
I know I am.
And
Anyway,
that goes
so we
for
should
our
try
vast
something
and
else.
complete audience.
Let's try something else
Yeah,
then.
which is what the program is all about. Let me dive down a little bit into PVs, since that's your true expertise. Another benefit of, we were talking earlier about solar farms versus rooftop. And of course, this is something that the PUC is examining very closely. Why should we take out agricultural land for solar farms when we have all this available roof space? But you and I probably fly in and out of Honolulu very frequently, and we look and we just see roofs. Let's get some PV up there. Number one, because it produces electricity.
I know. I think the same thing. And you
Yeah.
hear about the level of the per capita penetration of solar here in Hawaii and how high it is. But when you fly in, you don't see it. And when you fly into San Francisco, it's everywhere.
That I have not. Noticed,
Make a point of looking for that next time
Yeah.
you fly into San Francisco. And I know that it's here, but I think the same thing. Well, look at all this roof space. So
let me take that a step further. You're going to like this. When you install PV on a roof, you're raising the panels by 3-4 inches, and allowing the breeze to flow under that, because ironically you want the PV panels to be operating as cool as possible. Now you're completely shading the roof. How much solar heat gain is getting in through that roof? 0. You have a shaded roof.
brilliant.
If it's 83 degrees outside, the roof temperature is 83 maximum, might even be a bit lower. There's no heat gain. Plus, you're preserving the life of the roof. It's not being subjected to UV and rain and everything else. Yeah. So there's an added benefit for you. So with your expertise, why does there continue to be the push for solar farms?
Well, no one resource is going to get us to 100% RPS by 2045, right? And I've always advocated for a mixture of resources. We have a lot of sun here. We've got wind. Wind. You've heard the the Clean Energy Parade
Oh,
before.
yeah, I'm part of it, I'm part of it, yes.
Yeah, so it's a balance between the large farms and the distributed resources. I think that could be a whole show unto itself, but generally speaking, I believe that the commission sees the utility scale farms as being less expensive. It's an economies of scale kind of thing, that when you when you install one of those, if you have a method in place and you can go in and lay that down. So there is that, and they're also controllable right now anyway, in the sense that the utility can curtail those systems, and they have more control that way. But now with distributed generation and this smart generation that this group I've joined is can do and hopes to advocate for, there's a lot of talk about, well, how can the utility communicate with distributed resources if they've been aggregated, for instance? So it's a matter of the cost versus control. Then if you think, on the other hand, that distributed generation and distributed energy resources are invested in by the customer, so the cost of those are not rolled into the rates, where depending upon who owns the utility scale, say solar farm, that if it were the utility, for instance, that the cost of that would be rolled into the rates. So it's a mix of different things, and of course, as you mentioned, these farms like to have relatively flat landscape in order to be installed, which, depending upon the place and the type of soil, that tends to be where the agricultural lands are. And so does it make sense to put to put any kind of installation or any kind of development on those lands when you could be using roof space that's empty?
Precisely.
I still remember when I first moved to Hawaii in 2006, shortly after that, we had an earthquake.
Yes, we all remember that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it was pretty amazing to me, not so much the earthquake, because I grew up in Northern California, so I'm used to those, if you can ever get used to that. But, I thought, oh, well, look at this. But the next day, when I went down to Safeway, which is just down the street from my apartment, it was kind of empty.
Oh, you mean people had taken goods out?
Well, and all the refrigeration.
Oh, yeah.
I had never seen that before. And the little tiny town I grew up in, and the little store there down the road had a generator. And so when our electricity went out, everybody kind of gather around, drink coffee, and kind of have some fun, and then we'd go home, right, and have candles. And so it really struck me how vulnerable Hawaii is.
Yes.
That there's so many people who are blessed to live here, and that we actually wait for the food to get delivered to us. So does it make sense? Even if it were cheaper, and many will question that it's not at this point, especially with the rate that we have for grid supply.
And we need to take a break here.
Okay.
But hold that thought.
So go get a snack.
Yes.
You're thinking about food right now.
Yeah, Think Tech Hawaii,
Yeah.
back in a minute.
Aloha, I'm Rachel Jurgen with Aging with Grace. Please join us every Tuesday on thinktech.com.
Okay, I'm Jay Fidel, that's Ray Starling. We co-host a show called Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. It's really interesting. Ray has a way of unzipping these guys. He asks them these questions and all this stuff tumbles out, and we find out stuff we would never know about without Ray's questions. Thank you, Ray.
You're welcome, Jay. I'm very pleased to be your Ed McMahon every Wednesday at 4 o'clock here on the internet. So you can join us and see what's happening in the energy world, and there is a lot going on. So join us every Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, come around, be energized right here on Think Tech. Aloha.
Good afternoon again. Howard Wig, Code Green. We're in for our last segment of the program with Leslie Cole Brooks, Executive Director of Distributed Energy Resources Council. And we broke off by, you're talking about earthquakes and the fact that the power grid fails, and among other things, refrigeration fails. Now, what do you do? And so forth. Which leads to another topic that is really, really getting hot, namely net zero energy homes, and then after a while it'll be net zero energy buildings. A net zero energy home is a home where you have enough renewable energy, say photovoltaic, to equal the amount of energy that you produce. That's sort of the old net energy home. Now we're moving to the next generation of storage. Storage of the electrical energy is now becoming affordable. I've had a couple of guests representing the different battery companies, and they can get you in for, well, not an entirely self-sufficient system, but they can get you set up for as little as $4,000 or $5,000. And I think Hawaii Energy will give a rebate on that. So we're headed for more and more individual power supplies, which would address your concern, partially address your concern about we being cut off the grid. And incidentally, another thing I follow is the Earth's warming, and just read that the amount of heat that is being dumped into the ocean these days is equivalent to, and I find this hard to believe, 1 hydrogen bomb going off per second for the last 70 years. Is that fairly
It's hard
mind-boggling?
to fathom that.
Yeah.
And
But
then as the ocean warms, it becomes more acidic because the carbon dioxide gets dissolved in the salt water, so we have a higher, the pH becomes more acidic, so it goes down. And then creatures like plankton don't live in that, and there's nothing to eat, and on it goes. It's if only, it's just the web of our everything, from every unkind thought you have about anything all the way down to all of that. It all comes together, and yeah.
Spoken like a true scientist.
I believe that, yeah.
As we're both very, very well aware, hurricanes or typhoons on the other side of the date line feed off of warm ocean water. And what did we have last summer? In conjunction, we had that perfect storm of El Nino plus the warm ocean water. And we dodged how many hurricanes? At least 10?
I wanted to say 4 or 5, but
No,
more than that.
it was
I
more
know
than
that I
that, yeah.
finally went and got water. I didn't want to be one of those people who say, why didn't you do that? So I went and got containers for water, and I sent my husband off to get supplies, and he got canned sardines. Doesn't that sound like so disgusting? Anyway, and lentil soup. Why? Thank God it didn't happen. So anyway,
we dodged the bullet.
We did. We did.
Earth, or the ocean, is getting warmer. It's not, I regret to say it, it's not if, it's when we get hit. And just tying into our theme, the more individual storage capacity we have, the better we will be able to survive this. My guest just 2 weeks ago represents a battery storage company, and he proposes putting up battery systems in each of Hawaiian Electric's substations, so that when that power goes down, there will be at least a minimal amount of power emanating from those substations to take care of emergencies like police, ambulance, phones, maybe streetlights, and so forth.
Yeah, that it keeps the inertia up of the system. That storage, large and small, or he's probably talking about these larger scale, but in the aggregate you could have that as well, where it's almost like it's explained to me that the electrical system is a bicycle, and it's rolling along, and it has this energy, it has this inertia, but if a big bicycle, and if it actually comes to a stop, getting back on the bike and getting going again takes a lot of energy. And it's not a good situation when it actually comes full stop. Instead, it has something that will help maintain the life of the system, so that it's not so hard for all the systems to come back on. But of course, it's more complicated than that, right? That things have to be done in a certain way and all that. But yeah, storage has many attributes that could be of a great benefit.
Yeah, and again, I track these things and I see them, and this is maybe you can elaborate a little bit, about some of the companies, not naming them, but again, I'm just intrigued, and I don't know if you've been with the company long enough to have gotten your head around it, but intrigued as to how each of these 6 companies has a different capability. But as I see it, especially say in a crisis mode where say one of Hawaiian Electric's power plants goes down, as AES went down not long ago, can they rush in to fill the void, or can they help with storage such that we can feed in to the peak demand?
Well, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Mhm.
So there's that, and that's one of the huge benefits of storage. Is I always say it's a little joke that God and the goddess played on Hawaii, is that everything is perfect, right? We have perfect weather. It's so beautiful. The ocean is a jewel. We have wind, sun, geothermal, biomass, wave, OTEC. I mean, it's all there, right?
Yeah,
And we don't
yeah,
need
yeah.
really an AC. I mean, unless you're in a school with no
I would
insulation
put
in the
in
roof.
ceiling fans or something.
Yeah.
Reflective surfaces plus ceiling fans.
Right,
That's
so
what I'm
with your
saying,
great updated tropical building code, if they would just follow that, if only.
Well,
and,
they'll have to pretty soon.
Well, they'll have to. Did you all hear that? Look, it's the first time I've seen you laugh in a while. So, and no heating load. So it's perfect, but the problem is that the generation and the load aren't at the same time. And so
Precisely,
storage can help to capture that excess energy and then use it later when it's needed, either on site or to be exported, depending upon many things. But back to the hurricane example that you were using, one of the things that storage can do, and that my member companies are able to produce, is provide backup power. Because I think a lot of people don't realize that with just a standard PV system, that the inverter, the device that is in between the PV panel and the electrical grid, it communicates with the electrical grid all the time, right? And there's things called write-through settings, where if the inverter notices that something's not quite right out there, or maybe the line gets cut off, like a tree falls, if a Hawaiian Electric worker is up on the line, it will notice that there's something wrong with the line, and it will turn off within very particular parameters. So what that means is the inverter tells the PV panel to stop producing. And so the customer, if the power went out, for instance, and that's what happened apparently on the East Coast, is that people have renewable energy, but because the lines aren't activated, the systems are turned off. Now, if your system is designed in a smart way so that you can use storage and you have a backup system, when it perceives there's an issue on the grid, that it will then turn to the resources you have behind the meter. And you've done this in a very intelligent way, so just that your key loads are using this more limited resource, because it's a lot to
you just use it for the
just to
most
keep your
crucial.
beer cold. I mean, let's think this through, or other key things depending upon the situation. So
refrigeration would be the main thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so instead of during an emergency, the power supply just being cut off and being useless, right when you need it the most, now it goes in, it gets fed into your own storage system.
Yeah, right.
Or into a whole building
Right.
storage system,
Yeah. So there's really a lot of power there, no pun intended, and then in the aggregate, which will help to maintain reliability and more resiliency of the electrical grid.
Wow.
So,
we've got to close, but what I would like to do, you're just getting warmed up in this company here.
Yes,
and
it's
the
true.
companies are just getting warmed up. Maybe in maybe a year or so, bring you back, and all of this will be just churning away and making a major difference. So let's plan on getting together in a year or so.
Okay.
Because this is so exciting. This, folks, is the future. Leslie Colbrooks, Executive Director, Distributed Energy Resources Council, Howard Wake Code Green. See you next time.